A German Shepherd attacks the babysitter, and when the parents check the cameras, they call 911 in horror. She thought it was just a last-minute job. Watch the kids, feed the dog, easy. But within minutes, the family's massive German Shepherd turns violent, and won't stop until she's dead. Locked in the bathroom, bleeding, the babysitter dials 911. But what's captured on the security footage is something no one was ready to see. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. Why did the dog target her, and only her? Who set this up? And how far will someone go for revenge? Your comments and presence here remind me why I tell these stories. If you still believe in the healing strength of love, truth, and quiet courage, then you're the reason this channel exists. Bethany stood on the pristine doorstep of the Thornton mansion, her heart beating quickly as she pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed through what must have been an enormous foyer. She smoothed her simple blue dress, suddenly feeling underdressed for even a babysitting job. The heavy wooden door swung open, revealing a tall, distinguished-looking man with graying temples and an expensive suit. "You must be Bethany," he said, his tone businesslike but not unkind. "I'm Richard Thornton. Please, come in." Bethany stepped into a foyer that could have fit her entire apartment. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors and artwork that probably cost more than her entire college tuition. "Thank you for considering me on such short notice, Mr. Thornton," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Veronica, she's here!" Richard called up the sweeping staircase. Turning back to Bethany, he explained, "Our regular sitter, Mrs. Henderson, had a family emergency. We really can't reschedule this dinner. It's with some crucial investors." The click of heels on marble announced Veronica Thornton's arrival. She descended the stairs like a movie star, blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Bethany's car. Her blue eyes scanned Bethany with barely concealed disapproval. "You seem young," Veronica said, her lips pursing slightly. "Do you have any references?" Bethany felt her cheeks flush. "I've watched my younger cousins for years, and I've done some babysitting for families in my neighborhood. But I haven't worked for any families in this area yet." Veronica's perfectly manicured hand tightened on the banister. "Richard, a word." She pulled her husband aside, speaking in harsh whispers that Bethany couldn't quite make out, though she caught phrases like "completely irresponsible" and "what were you thinking?" Richard returned, looking slightly uncomfortable. "We're in a bit of a bind here," he said. "The children are already comfortable with Mrs. Henderson, but given the circumstances—" "I understand completely," Bethany said quickly. "I know it's not ideal, but I promise I'm responsible and good with kids. And honestly, I really need the work to help pay for my textbooks this semester." Something in Richard's expression softened at that. "Well, we do need someone tonight. Let me introduce you to the children." Just then, excited footsteps thundered down the hallway. A small blonde girl in a pink dress came running, followed by a more reserved boy with dark hair like his father's. "This is Lily, who's 5 years old," Richard said as the little girl bounced excitedly, "and Marcus, who's 8. "Hi," Lily beamed, while Marcus gave a polite nod. "There are detailed instructions on the kitchen counter," Veronica cut in, her tone clipped. "Bedtime is 8 o'clock for Lily, 8:30 for Marcus. No sugar after 7 o'clock, and absolutely no television until homework is complete." A deep bark echoed from somewhere in the house, making Bethany jump slightly. "And that would be Kaiser," Richard said. "He's our German Shepherd, very protective of the family but well-trained. He should be fine, but perhaps keep the children in the family room and kitchen area to be safe." Veronica's expression tightened further. "Kaiser can be territorial with strangers. It's best to avoid him entirely." Bethany nodded, trying not to show her nervousness. "Of course, I'll make sure to keep my distance." "Our numbers are on the fridge," Richard continued. "We should be back around 10 o'clock. Any questions?" "No, I think I've got everything," Bethany replied, forcing a confident smile. As the Thorntons prepared to leave, Bethany couldn't help but notice the tension between them. Richard helped Veronica with her coat, but she shrugged away from his touch. Her movements were sharp, agitated, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. "Be good for Bethany," Richard told the children, giving each a quick hug. Veronica merely nodded at them, her attention seemingly elsewhere. Just before walking out the door, Veronica turned back, her blue eyes boring into Bethany with an intensity that made her stomach clench. "Remember what I said about Kaiser," she said, her voice carrying an edge that seemed excessive for a simple warning about a dog. The door closed behind them, leaving Bethany alone with the children in the enormous house. She took a deep breath, pushing aside her unease about Veronica's strange behavior. She had dealt with protective mothers before, though none quite as intimidating as Veronica Thornton. "So," Bethany said brightly, turning to the children with a warm smile, "what should we do first? I heard something about homework." Lily grabbed her hand, already pulling her toward the family room, while Marcus followed with his backpack. Despite her initial nervousness, Bethany felt herself relaxing. Kids were kids, whether they lived in mansions or apartments. She could handle this. From somewhere in the house, Kaiser barked again, but Bethany pushed the sound from her mind. She had more important things to focus on, like helping Marcus with his math homework and listening to Lily's elaborate stories about her stuffed animals. Whatever tensions existed between the Thorntons, whatever strange undercurrents she had sensed, surely they wouldn't affect one simple evening of babysitting. The first hour passed smoothly as Bethany settled into a routine with the Thornton children. Marcus spread his math homework across the kitchen table, while Lily colored beside him, humming softly to herself. The normalcy of the scene almost made Bethany forget about the massive German shepherd watching her every move from his position in the doorway. "Do you need help with those fractions?" Bethany asked, noticing Marcus's furrowed brow as he stared at his worksheet. "Yes, please," he said quietly, scooting his chair over to make room for her. As Bethany leaned in to explain the problem, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Kaiser immediately stood at attention, his ears perked forward. "Oh, that's just the timer Mom set," Marcus explained, though his shoulders tensed slightly. "Kaiser has to check the perimeter now." Bethany watched in amazement as the dog moved with military precision through the house, checking each window and door before returning to his post. "That's quite impressive training," she said. Lily looked up from her coloring book, her blue eyes serious. "Mommy spent lots of money on his special training. She says he's not just a pet, he's a... She looked to her brother for help. "A security asset," Marcus finished, his voice carrying a hint of unease that seemed out of place for an 8-year-old discussing the family dog. Another whistle, this one in a different pattern, and Kaiser moved to a specific corner of the room. The children barely reacted, but Bethany noticed how they both glanced nervously at the dog before returning to their activities. "How about we start thinking about dinner?" Bethany suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "Your mom left instructions for heating up the lasagna." As she moved around the kitchen, following Veronica's detailed notes, Bethany became increasingly aware of Kaiser's intense focus on her movements. The dog's training was evident in every controlled motion, every disciplined response to the automated whistles that seemed to sound at precise intervals. "Kaiser really knows his stuff, doesn't he?" Bethany commented, trying to sound casual as she pulled plates from the cabinet. "Mom says he's special," Lily said, now setting the table. "He only listens to her whistles and special words. Even Daddy can't make him do things." Bethany nodded, noting how the children spoke about their mother's relationship with Kaiser. There was something almost fearful in their tone, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. As the lasagna heated in the oven, the kitchen grew warmer. Bethany felt a drop of perspiration roll down her neck, carrying with it the soft scent of her jasmine perfume, a small luxury she allowed herself despite her tight budget. Kaiser's head snapped up, his nostrils flaring. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Kaiser, no!" Marcus said sharply, but his voice trembled slightly. The dog's behavior shifted dramatically. He began pacing, his movements agitated but still controlled, as if fighting against his training. His eyes never left Bethany, and his growl grew more pronounced. "It's okay," Bethany said, trying to keep her voice steady for the children's sake. "I'll just stay over here by the counter." But as she moved, another wave of jasmine scent drifted through the warm air. Kaiser's reaction was immediate and disturbing. He barked sharply, then immediately fell silent, as if catching himself. His entire body went rigid, and his eyes took on an almost mechanical focus. "Maybe." Lily's voice was small. "Maybe Kaiser doesn't like your perfume. Mommy gets really angry when Mrs. Henderson wears perfume too." "Kaiser only likes Mommy's special scents," Marcus added, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "She says other smells confuse his training." Bethany felt a chill despite the kitchen's warmth. The dog's behavior seemed less like typical territorial protection and more like programmed responses. She had never seen an animal react to a simple perfume with such focused intensity. The timer beeped, making everyone jump. Kaiser's head swiveled toward the sound, but his body remained oriented toward Bethany. She moved carefully to remove the lasagna, very aware of the dog's tracking gaze. "Dinner's ready," she announced, trying to maintain a cheerful tone. "Why don't you both wash your hands?" As the children left the kitchen, Kaiser remained, his posture unnaturally still. Only his nose moved, testing the air where traces of jasmine lingered. Bethany couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't normal animal behavior. This was something else, something deliberately conditioned. She served the children's portions first, then prepared her own plate, all while maintaining a careful distance from Kaiser. The dog's attention never wavered, and each time the heating system kicked on, spreading the warm air and with it the scent of jasmine, his muscles would tense as if receiving an unspoken command. Throughout dinner, Bethany noticed how Marcus and Lily kept glancing between her and Kaiser, their movements becoming more nervous each time the dog reacted to her scent. They seemed to understand something about the situation that she didn't, something about their mother's special training and Kaiser's programmed responses that made them uncomfortable but unable or unwilling to explain. The peaceful dinner atmosphere shattered in an instant. Kaiser's previous tension exploded into a terrifying display of aggression. His bark echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot, making everyone at the table jump. "Kaiser, stop!" Marcus shouted, but his voice quivered with fear. The German Shepherd's posture had completely transformed. Gone was the disciplined guard dog, replaced by a snarling predator. His teeth gleamed in the kitchen light as he advanced toward Bethany, hackles raised and muscles coiled for attack. Lily burst into tears. "He's doing the scary thing again!" Bethany's heart hammered in her chest as she slowly stood from her chair. Kaiser tracked her movement with laser focus, his growls growing deeper and more threatening. This wasn't normal protective behavior. The dog's eyes held a programmed intensity that sent chills down her spine. "Marcus, Lily," Bethany said in a calm voice that belied her terror. "I need you both to very slowly move toward me." The children inched away from the table. Kaiser's head snapped between them and Bethany, but his aggressive focus remained fixed on her. Another wave of jasmine scent drifted through the air as Bethany's perspiration increased, and the dog's reaction was immediate and horrifying. Kaiser lunged forward with military precision, his powerful jaws snapping just inches from Bethany's leg as she stumbled backward. The children screamed. "Run!" Bethany grabbed both children's hands. "To the bathroom now!" They sprinted down the hallway, Kaiser's claws scratching against the hardwood floor as he pursued them with single-minded determination. Bethany could feel his hot breath behind them as they reached the bathroom door. She shoved the children inside and slammed it shut just as Kaiser's body crashed against it. The impact rattled the door in its frame. Lily sobbed uncontrollably while Marcus pressed himself against the far wall, his face pale with fear. "Under the sink," Bethany directed them, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Curl up small and stay quiet." The children huddled together in the cabinet beneath the sink as Kaiser continued his assault on the door. His barks had transformed into something mechanical and ruthless, not the protective warnings of a family pet, but the focused attack of a trained weapon. Bethany's trembling fingers fumbled with her phone as she dialed 911. The door shuddered with each impact as Kaiser hurled himself against it repeatedly. "911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was clear and professional. "Please help us," Bethany whispered, trying to keep her voice down. "I'm the babysitter at 875 Maple Grove Drive. The family's German Shepherd is attacking us. We're barricaded in the bathroom, but I don't know how long the door will hold." Another violent crash against the door made Lily whimper. Bethany could hear Kaiser's claws scraping against the wood, searching for any weakness. "Stay calm," the dispatcher instructed. "Officers are being dispatched now. Are you safe at the moment?" "We're locked in the bathroom," Bethany replied, watching splinters appear around the doorframe. "But the dog, this isn't normal behavior. He's been trained or triggered somehow. He won't stop attacking." The pounding continued relentlessly. Each impact seemed precisely targeted at the door's weakest points, revealing a frightening level of training behind the violence. "It's my fault," Marcus suddenly spoke up, his voice thick with tears. "I should have warned you about the perfume. Mom always says perfumes make Kaiser do his special job." Bethany's blood ran cold at the boy's words, but she forced herself to focus on keeping the children calm. "None of this is your fault," she assured them, even as her mind raced to understand the implications of what Marcus had said. "Help is coming. We just need to stay quiet and still." The dispatcher's voice came through the phone again. "Officers are 3 minutes out. Is anyone injured?" "No, we're all okay right now," Bethany answered, watching as Kaiser's attacks became more focused on the lower portion of the door. "But please hurry. The dog's behavior. It's like he's following some kind of training program. He's not going to stop." Lily's small hand reached out from under the sink, grabbing Bethany's pant leg. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." Bethany crouched down, keeping one hand pressed against the straining door. "But you're being so brave. Both of you are. We're going to be okay." The assault on the door continued without pause. Kaiser's attacks showed no signs of tiring or losing focus. If anything, they grew more precise and powerful. The doorframe began to splinter more severely, and Bethany could see the hinges starting to strain against their screws. "The door's not going to last much longer," Bethany reported to the dispatcher, her voice tight with fear. "Where are those officers?" "1 minute out," the dispatcher assured her. "You'll hear sirens any second now." As if on cue, the distant wail of police sirens pierced the air. But rather than deterring Kaiser, the sound seemed to intensify his determination. His attacks became even more frenzied, the door shuddering violently with each impact. Bethany pressed her back against the straining door, praying it would hold just a little longer. The children remained huddled under the sink, clinging to each other as their family pet continued his relentless, programmed assault on the other side. The wail of sirens grew louder, and red and blue lights began flashing through the bathroom window. Bethany heard car doors slamming and urgent voices shouting outside. "Police, open up!" a commanding voice called from the front of the house. Kaiser's assault on the door continued unabated, his growls mixing with the sound of splintering wood. The doorframe creaked ominously as one of the hinges started to pull free from the wall. "We're in here!" Bethany shouted. "The bathroom at the end of the hall! The dog is right outside!" Heavy footsteps thundered through the house. "Animal control, get that dog secured," someone ordered. "Ma'am, stay in the bathroom until we have the situation under control." The next few minutes were chaos. Kaiser's barks turned even more ferocious as the officers approached. There were shouts, the sound of a struggle, and the metallic clank of equipment. Even as the officers worked to subdue him, Kaiser remained focused on the bathroom door, fighting against their restraints to get to his target. "Clear!" an officer finally called out. "The dog is secured. You can come out now." Bethany's legs trembled as she helped the children out from under the sink. When she opened the door, she found the hallway filled with uniformed officers. Through the front windows, she could see neighbors gathering on their lawns, drawn by the commotion. 2 animal control officers were wrestling Kaiser into a reinforced transport cage, the dog still snarling and lunging toward Bethany. "Are you hurt?" A paramedic approached, medical bag in hand. Bethany looked down at her leg, noticing for the first time the torn fabric of her jeans and the shallow cuts from Kaiser's initial lunge. "Just some scratches, I think. The children are unharmed." "Let's get you checked out anyway," the paramedic said, leading her to sit on the living room couch. Marcus and Lily stayed close, refusing to leave her side as their family pet was carried out to a waiting vehicle. The sound of tires screeching on pavement announced the Thorntons' arrival. Richard burst through the front door first, his face ashen. "What happened? Are the children all right?" "Daddy!" Lily ran to him, tears streaming down her face. Veronica entered more slowly, her expression carefully composed as she surveyed the scene. Her eyes flickered between the emergency responders, the scratches on Bethany's leg, and the damage to the bathroom door. Something cold and calculating passed behind her eyes before she pulled Marcus into a tight embrace. "Your dog attacked me," Bethany explained to the responding officers, wincing as the paramedic cleaned her wounds. "But it wasn't random aggression. He was triggered by something. My jasmine perfume, according to Marcus. His behavior was precise, almost programmed." "That's ridiculous," Veronica cut in smoothly. "Kaiser is a protective dog, nothing more. The girl is a stranger in our home. He was simply doing his job." Richard's face had grown increasingly pale as he listened to Bethany's account. I never thought—" he stammered, looking between his wife and the police officers. "Sir, we'll need statements from both of you," an officer said, pulling out his notebook. "Standard procedure for any dog attack incident." As the paramedic wrapped Bethany's leg, she continued describing the attack to another officer. "The way he responded to the perfume, how he targeted me specifically, it was like flipping a switch. And the children seemed to know something about it. Marcus mentioned something about Kaiser doing his special job when he smells certain perfumes." The officer nodded, taking notes. "We'll investigate the incident thoroughly, but right now we're classifying this as a standard dog attack. Sometimes pets can react unpredictably to unfamiliar scents." Bethany caught Veronica's slight smile at those words, but it vanished quickly as she turned to comfort Lily. Richard, however, looked increasingly disturbed. He kept glancing between his wife and Bethany, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke with the officers. More emergency vehicles had arrived, their lights painting the elegant suburban street in alternating red and blue. Neighbors whispered among themselves, phones recording the scene as animal control secured Kaiser in their vehicle. The German Shepherd continued to strain against his restraints, still focused on Bethany, with unnatural intensity. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to file a formal statement," the officer told Bethany, as she stood carefully on her bandaged leg. "For now, is there someone who can pick you up?" "I've already called my parents," Bethany replied, watching as Richard Thornton paced anxiously near the front door, his business dinner forgotten in the chaos of the evening. Veronica remained perfectly poised, speaking quietly with another officer, but her eyes kept darting to Kaiser in the animal control vehicle. The whole scene felt surreal, police radios crackling, emergency lights flashing, neighbors gathering, and the Thorntons' perfect home now a crime scene. But what stuck with Bethany most was the calculated precision of Kaiser's attack, and the strange way Veronica seemed more concerned with controlling the situation than with anyone's safety. As Bethany's parents' car pulled up to the curb, she heard Marcus whisper to his sister, "Mom's going to be really mad about this." The words sent a chill down her spine, but before she could process their meaning, the officers were ushering her toward her parents' waiting vehicle. Richard's hands shook as he entered the security code for their home's surveillance system. The police had left, taking Kaiser with them, but his mind couldn't shake Bethany's description of the attack. Something felt terribly wrong about the whole situation. "What are you doing?" Veronica's voice was sharp as she entered his home office. "It's late, and we need to discuss how to handle this PR nightmare." "I'm checking the security footage," Richard replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Kaiser's never attacked anyone before. I want to see what really happened." Veronica's face tightened. "Don't be ridiculous. That girl probably provoked him somehow." The monitors flickered to life, displaying multiple camera angles of their home. Richard began rewinding through the evening's footage, watching the chaos unfold in reverse until he reached the attack. His breath caught as he witnessed Kaiser's focused aggression, exactly as Bethany had described. "See, she must have done something to trigger him," Veronica said, but Richard wasn't listening. Instead, he kept rewinding, day after day, watching Kaiser's movements through their home. Then he saw it. Every afternoon while he was at work, Veronica would take Kaiser to the basement. Richard switched to that camera feed, and his blood ran cold. There was his wife, dressed in workout clothes, systematically training their family dog. She would spray jasmine perfume on training dummies and use a special whistle, one he'd never seen before, to command Kaiser to attack. "Oh my God," Richard whispered, his face draining of color. "What have you done?" Veronica's composure cracked for just a moment before she recovered. "You're being dramatic. I was simply training our dog to protect our home." But Richard kept watching, horror mounting as weeks of footage revealed the calculated nature of his wife's actions. He saw her testing different whistle frequencies, reinforcing Kaiser's conditioning with treats and praise, always using that same jasmine scent as the trigger. Jasmine. The signature perfume of Sarah, his secretary, the woman he'd been seeing in secret for the past 6 months. The regular sitter didn't have a family emergency, did she? Richard's voice was hollow as the pieces fell into place. "You made sure she couldn't come tonight." "Well, well," Veronica's voice turned cold. "Finally putting it together, aren't you? Did you think I wouldn't find out about your little affair?" Richard spun in his chair to face her. "So you tried to kill an innocent teenager?" "She could have died, Veronica." "She was hardly innocent," Veronica sneered. "Young, auburn-haired, wearing that same cheap jasmine perfume your whore bathes in. I made sure the agency sent someone who matched the description. I just never expected they'd send someone so perfect." Richard felt sick as he watched more footage. There was Veronica, carefully placing that whistle where the children would find it, knowing they would play with it during Bethany's visit. There she was on the phone, canceling their regular sitter with a manufactured emergency. Every detail had been meticulously planned. "The children!" Richard choked out. "You used our children as part of your murder plot." "Oh, please," Veronica waved dismissively. They were never in any danger. Kaiser was trained to protect them while eliminating the target. I do wish they hadn't hidden in the bathroom with her, though. It made things so much messier than necessary. Richard's hands clenched into fists as he watched his wife speak about attempted murder with such casual disdain. "You're sick," he whispered. "You're actually sick. Those are our children, and you traumatized them to get revenge on me." "You brought this on yourself," Veronica's eyes flashed. "Did you think you could humiliate me and get away with it? I am a Thornton now. Nobody makes a fool of me." Richard looked back at the monitors, at the weeks of footage showing Veronica's systematic preparation. Every whistle command, every training session, every calculated detail, it was all there, documented in perfect high-definition clarity. His wife had tried to commit murder through their family pet, and she'd used their children as unwitting accomplices. "I'm calling the police," he said, reaching for his phone. "Don't be stupid," Veronica's voice turned threatening. "Think about what this would do to your reputation, to our children. Besides, it's your word against mine. Who's going to believe this elaborate conspiracy theory?" Richard held up his phone, already recording their conversation. They'll believe the security footage, and they'll believe this confession. It's over, Veronica. For the first time, real fear flickered across Veronica's perfect features. You wouldn't dare. Think about your position, your social standing. Think about what this scandal would do to your business. I'm thinking about Bethany, Richard said firmly. I'm thinking about our children. And I'm thinking about how close you came to destroying multiple lives tonight, all because of my mistake. No more. He pressed send on the text he'd composed to his lawyer, along with the recorded confession. I've already started the process. The police will be here soon to see the footage. It's done. Detective Sarah Martinez spread the evidence photos across her desk, each image telling a part of the increasingly disturbing story. The security footage from the Thornton residence played on a loop on her computer screen, showing Veronica's methodical training sessions with Kaiser. This goes deeper than we initially thought, she told her partner, Detective James Wilson. Look at these phone records. The records revealed dozens of calls between Veronica and Elite Investigations, a high-end private detective agency spanning the past 3 months. Martinez had already interviewed the agency's owner, who confirmed Veronica had hired them to follow Richard's mistress. She didn't just want to confirm the affair, Martinez explained, shuffling through her notes. She requested detailed reports on everything: the mistress's daily routine, her shopping habits, even her preferred perfume brand. Wilson leaned forward, examining the investigator's reports. Jasmine, the same scent she conditioned Kaiser to attack. Exactly. Martinez pulled up another document on her computer. And look at this. The call to tonight's Angel's babysitting service wasn't made by their regular sitter, Amy Peterson. It came from a burner phone purchased 3 days earlier. When we interviewed Amy, she confirmed she never had any family emergency. The detectives had pieced together how Veronica had carefully orchestrated every detail. She had called the agency herself, impersonating Amy, then immediately requested a replacement sitter with very specific characteristics: young, auburn-haired, petite, just like Richard's mistress. The business dinner was fabricated too, Wilson added, tapping another report. No reservations were made at any restaurant. Credit card records show Veronica and Richard were actually at the Golden Crown Hotel's bar, less than 10 minutes from their house. Martinez nodded grimly. She wanted to be close by. According to her original statement, she claimed they were supposed to be gone for hours at an important client dinner across town. But she planned to return early all along. The detective pulled up the security footage, showing Veronica placing the dog whistle where the children would find it. She knew the kids would play with it during Bethany's visit. She'd trained Kaiser to respond to specific frequencies. When the children blew that whistle, it triggered his attack response. And then she planned to claim Kaiser was protecting the children from an unstable babysitter, Wilson finished. She had her story ready: how they rushed home after getting a panicked call from the kids, only to find Kaiser had defended them from danger. Martinez spread out a timeline she'd constructed. Look at the level of premeditation here. 3 months ago, she hires private investigators. 2 months ago, she begins Kaiser's training. 6 weeks ago, she starts researching dog attack cases and self-defense laws. 4 weeks ago, she purchases the burner phone. 2 weeks ago, she begins conditioning Kaiser specifically to the jasmine scent. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed Veronica's systematic approach to training Kaiser, using increasingly sophisticated techniques to ensure the dog would attack anyone wearing jasmine perfume while protecting the children. Phone records revealed careful coordination with multiple parties. Financial records showed calculated purchases of training equipment and supplies. The most chilling part, Martinez said, pulling up another video clip, is how she used her own children in this scheme. She deliberately exposed them to the training whistle, knowing they would play with it. She planned to use their presence to sell her story about Kaiser protecting them. Wilson shook his head in disgust. She was willing to traumatize her own kids just to get revenge on her husband. And she nearly killed an innocent teenager in the process, Martinez added. If Bethany hadn't managed to get herself and the children into that bathroom. The detective let the thought hang unfinished. They had both seen cases of dog attacks before. Given Kaiser's size and training, the outcome could have been fatal. "We've got everything we need," Wilson said, gathering the evidence files. "Attempted murder, child endangerment, conspiracy, false reporting. The DA's going to have a field day with this one." Martinez nodded, closing her laptop. The premeditation is undeniable. 3 months of calculated planning, manipulating multiple parties, using her children as unwitting accomplices, and deliberately targeting an innocent victim who matched her husband's mistress's description. She orchestrated every detail. The detective stood, gathering her files. The case against Veronica Thornton was ironclad. What had started as a seemingly routine dog attack investigation had revealed an elaborate murder plot driven by revenge, privilege, and cold calculation. The evidence painted a clear picture of a woman who had weaponized her family pet, traumatized her children, and nearly killed an innocent teenager, all in an attempt to punish her husband's infidelity. "Let's finish the paperwork," Martinez said. "The DA wants to move quickly on this one. With the security footage and Richard's cooperation, Veronica Thornton won't be able to buy her way out of these charges." The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast harsh shadows across Dr. Sarah Chen's face as she studied Bethany's latest scan results. What had initially seemed like minor injuries from her brief encounter with Kaiser had developed into something far more serious. The doctor's expression tightened as she noted the growing shadows on the imaging screen. "We've got internal bleeding," she announced to her team. "The impact when Kaiser knocked her down caused more damage than we initially thought. Her spleen is compromised." In the intensive care unit, Bethany lay unconscious, her freckled face pale against the stark white hospital sheets. The steady beep of monitors provided an ominous rhythm to the growing crisis. Her parents sat beside her bed, their working-class clothes a stark contrast to the stream of expensive suits that had been flowing through the hospital wing all day. Down in the hospital lobby, Richard Thornton paced, his normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. His silver hair was disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled from hours of anxious movement. Detective Martinez had just shown him the latest medical report, and the implications were devastating. "If she doesn't make it," Martinez said quietly, "we're looking at murder charges, not just attempted murder. Your testimony could be crucial, Mr. Thornton. We need to know everything about Veronica's behavior leading up to that night." Richard stopped pacing, his face a mask of torment. "You don't understand. If I testify against my wife, I'll lose everything. My reputation, my social standing, my children." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "The scandal alone would destroy us." "An innocent 19-year-old girl might die," Martinez reminded him firmly. "Your wife deliberately set this up. She used your children as pawns in her revenge plot. Are you really willing to protect someone capable of that?" Before Richard could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his lawyer, warning him that Veronica was already mobilizing her family's considerable political connections. Her father, a state senator, had made calls questioning the integrity of the police investigation. Her brother, a prominent defense attorney, was preparing a narrative that would paint Bethany as an irresponsible caregiver who had provoked Kaiser. Richard felt sick. He had known Veronica could be cold, calculating even, but this level of sociopathic planning shocked him to his core. The affair had been a mistake, a brief relationship with his young real estate assistant that he'd already ended. But Veronica's response had gone beyond revenge into something truly evil. In another part of the hospital, Veronica sat in her lawyer's office, her perfectly maintained appearance betraying no sign of concern. "The police investigation is clearly biased," she was saying. "That detective has a history of targeting prominent families. We can use that." Her brother nodded, making notes. "I've already spoken to Judge Harrison. He's sympathetic to our position. And Dad's calls to the police commissioner have raised serious questions about Detective Martinez's methods." But Veronica's carefully constructed defense was about to face its biggest challenge. Up in the ICU, Bethany's condition suddenly deteriorated. Alarms blared as her blood pressure dropped dangerously low. "She's crashing!" Dr. Chen shouted, rushing into the room. "Get her to surgery now!" The news of Bethany's critical condition spread quickly through the hospital's corridors, reaching Richard just as he was about to leave. He stopped dead in his tracks, memories of the security footage flooding his mind. Veronica methodically training Kaiser, using the whistle, conditioning him to attack the jasmine scent. He thought of his children, how they'd been used as unwitting accomplices in their mother's scheme. The hospital corridors buzzed with whispered conversations as staff and visitors traded rumors about the prominent family's scandal. Some defended the Thorntons, claiming there must be more to the story. Others expressed outrage that Veronica might escape justice due to her connections. Richard stood at the window of the ICU waiting room, watching as doctors rushed in and out of Bethany's room. In the reflection, he saw himself, successful, wealthy, respected. Everything he'd worked for was on the line. But as he watched Bethany's parents crying in the corner, he saw something else too: the cost of his choices, the ripple effect of his infidelity that had led to this moment. Bethany lay in surgery, fighting for her life, completely unaware of the larger conspiracy that had made her its target. She didn't know about the carefully planned revenge scheme, the political maneuvering, or the moral crisis her attack had triggered. She was just a college student who had taken a babysitting job to help pay for her education. Detective Martinez approached Richard again, holding a formal statement form. "Mr. Thornton, we need your decision. Will you testify about what you saw on those security tapes?" Richard stared at the paper, feeling the weight of his choice pressing down on him. His phone buzzed again, more messages from Veronica's lawyers warning him to stay quiet. In his mind, he saw Bethany's young face, so similar to his children's babysitter, who could have just as easily been the victim that night. He thought of Marcus and Lily, and the trauma they had endured watching Kaiser attack an innocent person. The choice before him was clear, even if the consequences would be devastating. His marriage, his social standing, his reputation, all of it built on a foundation that had already crumbled the moment Veronica had chosen revenge over humanity. Marcus Thornton sat in the children's interview room at the police station, his small frame nearly swallowed by the oversized armchair. Child psychologist Dr. Rachel Weber sat across from him, her gentle demeanor helping to ease the obvious tension in his 8-year-old shoulders. The walls were painted in cheerful colors, with cartoon characters offering silent encouragement, but Marcus's eyes remained fixed on his fidgeting hands. "You're very brave for coming to talk to me today, Marcus," Dr. Weber said softly, placing a box of colored markers and paper on the table between them. "Would you like to draw while we chat?" Marcus nodded, selecting a blue marker with trembling fingers. As he began to sketch, Dr. Weber noticed he was drawing a dog, Kaiser unmistakably, in the backyard of his home. "Can you tell me about what you used to see in your backyard, Marcus?" she prompted gently. The boy's hand stilled, and tears welled up in his eyes. "Mom will be mad if I tell," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You're safe here, Marcus. Nothing you say will get you in trouble. We just want to help Bethany get better." At the mention of Bethany's name, Marcus's resolve seemed to strengthen. "She was nice to us," he said. "She helped me with my math homework, and she didn't deserve what Kaiser did." Detective Martinez watched through the one-way glass as Marcus finally began to open up. The boy's small shoulders straightened as he described what he had witnessed over the past several weeks. "Mom would take Kaiser out really early before we were supposed to be awake," Marcus explained, his marker moving across the paper again. "But I could see them from my bedroom window. She had this special whistle. It made a weird sound." Dr. Weber nodded encouragingly. What would happen when she used the whistle? "She had this scarf," Marcus continued, switching to a red marker. "It smelled like flowers. She would tie it to a practice dummy, like the ones Kaiser used to train with before. When she blew the whistle, she'd make Kaiser attack it." Behind the glass, Detective Martinez scribbled notes frantically. This was the breakthrough they needed. Direct eyewitness testimony of Veronica's premeditation. "Kaiser would get treats after," Marcus added, his voice growing quieter. really good ones, from the special pet store, but only if he attacked the flower smell really hard. Dr. Weber kept her voice steady, despite the chilling revelation. "Did you ever tell anyone what you saw?" Marcus shook his head, tears now flowing freely. "Mom said Kaiser's training was our secret. She said he needed to learn to protect us better, but it didn't feel right. Lily was scared too, but we didn't know what to do." In the observation room, Richard Thornton watched his son's testimony with mounting horror. Each word from Marcus's mouth drove home the calculated nature of Veronica's actions. She hadn't just planned to harm someone. She had involved their children in her scheme, burdening them with a terrible secret. "When Bethany came," Marcus continued, his drawing now showing a figure in the hospital bed, "she smelled like Mom's training scarf. As soon as she walked in, I knew something bad would happen. I wanted to warn her, but Mom said we'd get in big trouble if we ever talked about Kaiser's special training." Dr. Weber gently placed her hand near Marcus's, not touching, but offering support. "You're doing the right thing by telling us now, Marcus. You're helping make sure no one else gets hurt." The boy looked up, his eyes full of confusion and pain. "But what happens to Mom, and Kaiser, and our family?" The question hung heavy in the air. Dr. Weber exchanged a glance with the observation window, knowing that Marcus's world was about to change dramatically. His testimony would ensure justice for Bethany, but at the cost of his own family's destruction. "Sometimes," Dr. Weber said carefully, "doing the right thing is very hard, but you're showing incredible courage by telling the truth." Marcus nodded, adding final details to his drawing. "Bethany was nice to Kaiser too, even though Mom made him mean. It wasn't his fault. Mom made him do bad things." Detective Martinez turned to Richard, who had sunk into a chair, his face ashen. "Your son's testimony changes everything," he said quietly. "This isn't circumstantial evidence anymore. It's first-hand witness account of premeditated attempted murder." Richard watched as his son continued to speak with Dr. Weber, describing in heartbreaking detail how Veronica had systematically trained their family pet to become a weapon. The security footage had been damning, but hearing it from Marcus's innocent perspective made it unbearable. "She made us promise not to tell Daddy," Marcus was saying, his voice breaking. "She said it was our special project to make Kaiser a better guard dog, but he wasn't better. He was scary. Even Lily stopped wanting to play with him." Dr. Weber guided Marcus through the rest of his statement, documenting each training session he had witnessed, the specific commands Veronica had used, and how she had sworn him to secrecy. The boy's testimony painted a clear picture of a mother who had not only plotted to harm an innocent person, but had also manipulated her children into becoming unwitting accomplices. As Marcus finished his statement, Dr. Weber asked one final question. "What made you decide to tell us the truth today, Marcus?" The boy looked down at his drawing of Bethany in the hospital bed. "Because she might die," he said simply, "and it would be like we helped hurt her by not telling. I don't want to help hurt people anymore." His words echoed through the observation room, striking Richard like physical blows. His son's courage in coming forward stood in stark contrast to his own initial hesitation to testify. While he had worried about social standing and reputation, his 8-year-old son had chosen truth and justice, despite the personal cost. Marcus's testimony would become the cornerstone of the case against Veronica, transforming a circumstantial investigation into an airtight prosecution. But the victory felt hollow, as everyone watched the young boy struggle with the weight of betraying his mother to protect an innocent stranger. Bethany Caldwell lay in her hospital bed, surrounded by the steady beeping of monitors and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Her body ached from the internal injuries Kaiser had inflicted, but her mind was focused on something far more painful: the image of 8-year-old Marcus having to testify against his own mother. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen sat in the visitor's chair beside Bethany's bed, reviewing case notes. "Marcus's testimony is crucial," she explained. "Combined with the security footage, it gives us an airtight case against Veronica Thornton." Bethany shifted uncomfortably, wincing at the movement. But what about Marcus? What happens to him after he testifies? He'll be called as a witness in the trial, Chen began, but Bethany cut her off. No, I mean, what happens to him emotionally? He's just a little boy who's being asked to send his mother to prison. Bethany's voice was weak but determined. He needs protection, not just legal, but psychological. Chen looked up from her notes, studying the young woman before her. Despite being pale and clearly in pain, Bethany's eyes burned with conviction. Marcus did something incredibly brave, Bethany continued. He told the truth even though it meant betraying his mother. We can't just use his testimony and then abandon him to deal with the trauma alone. Dr. Weber, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. I agree completely. Marcus is showing signs of severe emotional distress. Bethany turned to the child psychologist. Is there any way we can minimize his court appearance? Maybe video testimony? I don't want him to have to face his mother in person while describing what she did. Chen frowned. That's unusual for such a crucial witness. I don't care if it's unusual, Bethany interrupted, her voice growing stronger. I'm the victim here, and I'm telling you I want Marcus protected. Use my statement, use the security footage, use whatever you need, but handle that little boy's testimony with care. The conviction in Bethany's voice made both women pause. Here was someone who had nearly died because of Veronica Thornton's actions, yet her primary concern was protecting her attacker's child. There might be a way, Chen said slowly. We could petition for a closed-circuit testimony setup. Marcus would only need to speak to the judge and attorneys in a private room, with his testimony broadcast to the courtroom. And I want guaranteed counseling for both children, Bethany added. Not just during the trial, but long-term support. They're going to need it. Dr. Weber nodded approvingly. I can recommend several specialists who work specifically with children of incarcerated parents. Both Marcus and Lily will need ongoing support to process this trauma. Bethany relaxed slightly, though the movement caused her to grimace in pain. A nurse entered to check her vitals, tutting at her elevated heart rate. You need to rest, the nurse advised, adjusting Bethany's medication drip. I will, Bethany promised, but first I need to know these kids will be taken care of. Richard Thornton appeared in the doorway, looking haggard and years older than he had just days before. They will be, he said quietly. I've already started looking into family therapy options. The room fell silent as Richard approached Bethany's bed. I don't understand, he said, his voice rough with emotion. How can you be so concerned about my children's welfare after what my wife tried to do to you? Bethany met his gaze steadily. Because your children are innocent victims too, Mr. Thornton. They didn't ask for any of this. Marcus and Lily deserve a chance to process this trauma in a healthy way. Even though their mother... Richard couldn't finish the sentence. Even though their mother tried to kill me? Bethany completed it for him. Yes, I refuse to let Veronica's actions poison me with bitterness or revenge. Those children need support and protection, not punishment for their mother's crimes. Chen watched this exchange with growing respect. I'll start the paperwork for the modified testimony procedures, she said, standing, and I'll make sure counseling requirements are built into any plea agreements or sentencing recommendations. Thank you, Bethany said sincerely, and please, make sure Marcus knows that he did the right thing. He needs to understand that none of this is his fault. Dr. Weber stepped forward. I'll continue working with both children through this process. Marcus is already showing signs of guilt for speaking up. He needs constant reassurance that he made the right choice. Tell him, Bethany said softly. Tell him that he probably saved my life. And tell him that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth, even when it hurts. Richard wiped at his eyes. I don't deserve your compassion, he said. My affair set this whole thing in motion. No, Bethany replied firmly. Your wife's choices set this in motion. She chose to try to kill an innocent person instead of confronting you directly. She chose to involve your children in her revenge plot. Those were her decisions, not yours. The nurse returned, insisting it was time for Bethany to rest. As the others prepared to leave, Bethany called out one final request. "Please make sure the children know I don't blame them," she said. "And if possible, I'd like to meet with them, when they're ready and if their counselor approves. I think it might help them heal if they see that I'm okay and that I don't hate them." Dr. Weber smiled warmly. "That kind of closure could be very beneficial, once they're emotionally ready. Your compassion is remarkable, Bethany." As the group left her room, Bethany finally allowed herself to relax against her pillows. The pain medication was making her drowsy, but her mind was at peace. She couldn't change what Veronica had done, but she could help ensure that 2 innocent children didn't suffer more than necessary for their mother's crimes. In the hallway, Chen turned to Dr. Weber. "I've never seen a victim so focused on protecting the perpetrator's children." "That's because Bethany understands something crucial," Dr. Weber replied. "She sees that healing isn't just about physical recovery, it's about preventing the cycle of trauma from claiming more victims." Richard Thornton listened to their words, feeling both shame and gratitude. While his wife had chosen revenge and destruction, this young woman chose compassion and protection. It was a stark reminder of the moral chasm between victim and perpetrator, and a testament to the power of choosing grace over vengeance. The polished mahogany conference table at Blackwood and Associates law firm gleamed under soft lighting as Veronica Thornton sat surrounded by her high-powered legal team. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer suit projected an image of wounded innocence rather than calculated malice. "The security footage means nothing without context," declared James Blackwood, her lead attorney. "We can easily frame this as routine pet training sessions being misinterpreted by an overzealous prosecution." Veronica dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I was simply trying to ensure our family's safety. That girl was completely irresponsible with Kaiser." "Speaking of the girl," said Patricia Morrison, the firm's media relations specialist, "our research team has been digging into Bethany Caldwell's background. Working-class family, struggling to pay for college, taking any job she can get. We can spin this as an opportunistic attempt to exploit a wealthy family's misfortune." Veronica's eyes hardened. "Do it. Show everyone what she really is." Within days, the carefully orchestrated character assassination campaign began. Local news outlets, influenced by the Thornton family's considerable advertising spending, ran stories questioning Bethany's qualifications as a babysitter. Opinion pieces suggested she had provoked Kaiser through incompetence or negligence. Sources close to the family report that Miss Caldwell ignored explicit instructions regarding the Thorntons' protective family pet, read one article. The question must be asked, was this an honest mistake or a calculated attempt to create a lawsuit opportunity? The defense team filed motion after motion, challenging the admissibility of the security footage and questioning the context of what it showed. Their expert witnesses testified that Kaiser's training appeared to be standard protection dog conditioning, not preparation for an attack. "My client is a devoted mother who simply wanted to ensure her children's safety," Blackwood proclaimed to reporters on the courthouse steps. "This entire investigation is based on circumstantial evidence and the traumatized memories of a child who may have misinterpreted what he saw." In her hospital room, Bethany watched these developments with growing distress. News channels played clips of Veronica's supporters describing her as a pillar of the community, while subtly suggesting Bethany's working-class background made her motives suspicious. "They're trying to make me look like a gold digger," Bethany said quietly to her mother, who sat beside her hospital bed, as if nearly dying was part of some master plan to get rich. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Anyone who knows you knows that's ridiculous, sweetheart." But the Thorntons' influence ran deep. Society columnists wrote about Veronica's charitable works and positions on various foundation boards. Photos appeared of her at children's hospital fundraisers and animal welfare events, creating a public image that seemed incompatible with attempted murder. The defense team's latest motion sought to exclude Marcus's testimony entirely, arguing that the trauma of the event and subsequent questioning had corrupted his memories. Their child psychology expert claimed Marcus's statement was likely influenced by leading questions and pressure from investigators. The boy clearly loves his mother, the expert testified. Any negative statements he's made about her actions are more likely the result of confusion and trauma than actual memories. District Attorney Chen watched with growing frustration as Veronica's team attempted to dismantle their case piece by piece. "They're trying to buy reasonable doubt," she told her team, "and they can afford the best doubt money can buy." The pressure intensified when several local business owners, dependent on advertising revenue from Thornton-owned media outlets, began publicly questioning Bethany's version of events. Talk radio hosts speculated about her motives, while online comment sections filled with accusations about her character. "This is what wealth and privilege look like when they're threatened," Chen explained to Bethany during a case update meeting. "They're not just attacking the evidence, they're trying to destroy your credibility before you ever take the stand." Veronica's campaign reached new heights when her team arranged a soft-focus television interview. Seated in her elegant living room, wearing subtle makeup that emphasized her vulnerability, she presented herself as a misunderstood victim of circumstance. "Of course I feel terrible about what happened," she said, her voice trembling perfectly. "But Kaiser was only doing what any protective dog would do. To suggest I somehow trained him to attack is simply absurd. I'm a mother. I would never endanger children or their caregiver." The interviewer, carefully selected by her media team, asked no challenging questions about the security footage or Marcus's testimony. Instead, they discussed Veronica's charitable work and her difficult year dealing with these false accusations. Richard Thornton watched the interview from his temporary apartment, having moved out of the family home after the incident. His hands clenched into fists as he witnessed his wife's performance. "She's trying to gaslight the entire city," he told his own attorney, "just like she gaslighted me for years." But Veronica's influence continued to spread. Her family's political connections resulted in subtle pressure on the district attorney's office to consider a plea deal. Anonymous sources suggested that pursuing charges against such a prominent community figure could have consequences for upcoming budget discussions. The defense team's latest filing attacked the investigation itself, claiming bias and procedural errors. They demanded access to all communication between investigators, hoping to find any inconsistencies they could exploit. "We're facing a well-funded machine designed to protect wealth and privilege," Chen told Bethany during another hospital visit. "They're not just fighting the charges. They're trying to make an example of what happens when someone from your background challenges someone from their social circle." Bethany struggled to sit up straighter in her hospital bed. "So they're not just denying what she did, they're punishing me for surviving it." "That's exactly what they're doing," Chen confirmed. "In their world, the truth matters less than the narrative they can create with money and influence." Local news coverage began featuring legal experts who questioned whether the case was being blown out of proportion. They suggested that while the incident was unfortunate, attempting to prove attempted murder might be overreaching. "Perhaps this is simply a civil matter," one commentator suggested, "rather than a criminal case that's consuming so many taxpayer resources." The impact of Veronica's campaign became clear when Bethany's family began receiving hostile messages from strangers who had accepted the defense team's narrative. Some suggested she should know her place and drop the charges against such a respected community figure. "They're trying to make me disappear," Bethany realized, watching another news segment questioning her character. "They want to bury the truth under so many layers of doubt and suspicion that no one will see what really happened." The contrast between victim and accused had never been starker. Bethany in her hospital bed, fighting for recovery and justice, while Veronica moved through high society events, playing the role of persecuted philanthropist to perfection. "Money doesn't just buy the best legal defense," Chen observed grimly. "It buys the power to rewrite reality itself." As Veronica's character assassination campaign gained momentum, the truth seemed increasingly fragile against the onslaught of wealth, influence, and carefully crafted deception. The question remained whether justice could prevail against such a formidable display of power and privilege. Richard Thornton sat in the witness preparation room, his usually immaculate suit wrinkled from hours of nervous fidgeting. District Attorney Chen stood before him, reviewing key points of his upcoming testimony. "Just tell the truth," she said, studying his haunted expression. "That's all we need." Richard nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. "I never thought I'd be here," he said quietly. "Testifying against my own wife." Through the window, he could see reporters gathering outside the courthouse. His testimony would destroy everything he'd built: his reputation, his business relationships, his standing in the community. Years of careful networking and deal-making would crumble the moment he took the stand. "Mr. Thornton," Chen said gently, "I know this isn't easy, but your testimony could save Bethany's life. If Veronica isn't stopped, she might try again." Richard closed his eyes, remembering the security footage of his wife methodically training Kaiser. The cold calculation in her eyes as she conditioned their family pet to become a weapon. All because he couldn't resist an affair with his young marketing director, Amanda. "I started noticing changes in Veronica's behavior about 3 months ago," he began, practicing his testimony. "She became obsessed with Kaiser's training. I thought she was just being protective of the children, but now I understand she was planning this all along." The bailiff appeared at the door. "They're ready for you, Mr. Thornton." Walking into the courtroom felt like moving through molasses. Richard could feel the weight of every eye upon him, the jury, the spectators, and most of all, Veronica. His wife sat at the defense table, her expression a perfect mask of wounded innocence. "Please state your name for the record," the court clerk instructed. "Richard James Thornton." "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." The words felt like stones in his mouth. District Attorney Chen approached. "Mr. Thornton, when did you first become aware that your wife had discovered your extramarital affair?" The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Richard forced himself to look straight ahead, avoiding Veronica's gaze. 2 months before the incident with Bethany, I found receipts from a private investigator on Veronica's desk. She had hired someone to follow me and Amanda. Amanda being your marketing director, with whom you were having an affair? Yes. His voice cracked slightly. The investigator's report included detailed information about Amanda's daily routine, including her preference for jasmine perfume. Chen nodded. "The same scent Bethany was wearing the night of the attack?" "Yes, it's a distinctive fragrance. Amanda always said it was her signature scent." Richard described the changes in Veronica's behavior after discovering the affair. Her sudden interest in Kaiser's training, her insistence on handling all aspects of the dog's care herself, the strange whistles he would hear from the backyard late at night. "I should have recognized what was happening," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret, "but I was so focused on hiding my own guilt, I ignored the warning signs." Chen produced security footage timestamps. "Can you confirm these dates align with when you noticed changes in your wife's behavior?" Richard examined the dates, matching them against his memories. "Yes. This was when Veronica started spending hours in the backyard with Kaiser. She said she was working on his protection training. I never imagined she was teaching him to kill. In the gallery, several business associates who had known Richard for years turned away, unable to meet his eyes. He could feel his carefully constructed world crumbling with each word of testimony. "Mr. Thornton, why did you decide to testify today?" Chen asked. Richard straightened in his chair. "Because an innocent young woman almost died due to my mistakes. My infidelity set these events in motion, but Veronica's response was calculated murder. I have to take responsibility for my role in this tragedy, even if it costs me everything." During cross-examination, Veronica's defense team tried to paint Richard as a bitter husband, attempting to deflect blame for his own infidelity. But his testimony remained steady, even as he admitted his own failings. "Yes, I betrayed my wife. Yes, I lied to her." But discovering that betrayal doesn't justify attempting to murder an innocent person. Nothing justifies what Veronica did to Bethany. The personal cost of his testimony became immediately apparent. During a court recess, Richard overheard two major clients discussing the need to distance themselves from the scandal. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from business partners politely severing ties, but it was the look in his children's eyes that cut deepest. Marcus and Lily sat in the courtroom with their aunt, watching their father's testimony destroy what remained of their family. Yet Richard knew that choosing silence would have taught them an even worse lesson about moral courage. "The truth is," he concluded in his testimony, "I failed as a husband and father long before today. But I won't fail to do what's right now, even if it costs me everything I have." As he stepped down from the witness stand, Richard caught a glimpse of Bethany sitting with her family. The young woman he had never properly met before the attack looked at him with unexpected compassion, as if understanding the price he had chosen to pay for justice. Veronica's mask finally cracked as he walked past the defense table. "You're destroying everything," she hissed, quiet enough that only he could hear. "Our family, our position, our future, all gone because you couldn't keep your guilt to yourself?" Richard paused, looking at his wife, really looking at her, perhaps for the first time in their marriage. "No, Veronica. It's gone because you tried to kill an innocent girl to punish me. That's the truth I have to live with. And now, so do you." The media frenzy outside the courthouse was intense. Reporters shouted questions about betrayal, both his affair and his testimony. Former friends hurried past without acknowledgement. His phone continued buzzing with messages from business associates expressing their regret at having to reevaluate their relationships. But as Richard walked to his car alone, his shoulders were straight. He had lost his marriage, his reputation, and much of his business empire. But he had finally chosen truth over self-preservation, justice over privilege. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could fully redeem his role in these events, but it was perhaps the first step toward becoming someone his children could respect again. District Attorney Chen caught up with him in the parking lot. "Your testimony was crucial," she said. "You did the right thing." Richard nodded, looking back at the courthouse where his life had just imploded. "The right thing?" he repeated quietly. "It's about time I learned what that means." The courtroom fell silent as 8-year-old Marcus Thornton walked to the witness stand, his small frame barely visible behind the wooden barrier. His Aunt Sarah had dressed him in a navy sweater and khaki pants, making him look even younger than his years. Judge Martinez leaned forward, her stern expression softening. "Hello, Marcus. Do you understand why you're here today?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied, his voice quiet but clear. "I have to tell the truth about what I saw Mom doing with Kaiser." The prosecutor, District Attorney Chen, approached carefully. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with child psychologists to ensure Marcus could testify without additional trauma. "Marcus, can you tell us about Kaiser's training sessions with your mother?" Marcus glanced nervously at where Veronica sat at the defense table, her face a mask of practiced concern. His Aunt Sarah gave him an encouraging nod from her seat in the gallery. "Mom would take Kaiser to the backyard every night after dinner," he began. "She had these special whistles, different ones made different sounds, and she had this bottle of perfume she would spray on old clothes." "What happened during these training sessions?" Chen asked gently. "Mom would blow the whistle and show Kaiser the clothes with the perfume. At first, he just sniffed them. But then she started telling him, 'Attack' and 'kill.' Marcus's voice trembled slightly. She gave him treats when he got really angry at the perfume smell." In the gallery, several jurors shifted uncomfortably. Bethany, sitting with her parents, wrapped her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. "Did Kaiser's behavior change during these sessions?" Marcus nodded. "He got meaner when he smelled that perfume. Mom said he was learning to protect us, but—" He paused, looking down at his hands. "Kaiser wasn't mean before. He was our friend." The security footage played on the courtroom screens, showing Veronica in the backyard with Kaiser. The timestamps matched perfectly with Marcus's account. The jury watched as Veronica systematically conditioned the family pet, using whistles and jasmine-scented items to trigger aggressive responses. "That's what she did," Marcus said, pointing at the screen. "She'd blow the whistle and show him the perfume clothes, then tell him to attack, over and over." Veronica's defense attorney stood for cross-examination, but his usual aggressive style was tempered by the witness's age. "Marcus, isn't it possible you misunderstood what your mother was doing? Perhaps she was just training Kaiser to be a better guard dog." Marcus shook his head. "Number, she said she was teaching him to hurt someone. I heard her talking to Kaiser when she thought I was asleep. She said soon, and she deserves it." The defense attorney faltered. There was no way to challenge the boy's simple, honest recollection without appearing to bully a child. District Attorney Chen then presented the forensic evidence. Animal behavior experts testified about the sophisticated conditioning techniques Veronica had employed, explaining how Kaiser's natural protective instincts had been weaponized through systematic training. The dog's response to the jasmine scent was precisely conditioned, Dr. Reynolds, the animal behavior expert, explained. This wasn't random aggression. It was a trained response using classical conditioning methods. The attack on Miss Caldwell was the exact outcome this training was designed to produce. The prosecution methodically dismantled Veronica's attempts to discredit Bethany. Employment records showed Bethany's spotless work history. Character witnesses from her college and previous employers testified to her responsibility and integrity. The emergency call recordings proved she had followed every safety protocol during the attack. "The defendant would have you believe Miss Caldwell provoked this attack," Chen addressed the jury. "But the evidence shows a calculated plan to weaponize a family pet against an innocent victim who happened to wear the same perfume as Mr. Thornton's mistress." The security footage from the night of the attack played next. The jury watched Kaiser's immediate reaction to Bethany's jasmine perfume, his behavior matching exactly the response Veronica had conditioned. They saw Bethany's quick thinking as she protected the children, barricading them in the bathroom while Kaiser attacked the door with trained precision. "This was not a random dog attack," Chen continued. "This was attempted murder by proxy. Mrs. Thornton specifically requested a last-minute babysitter matching certain physical characteristics. She fabricated an emergency to dismiss their regular sitter. She engineered a situation where an innocent young woman would be alone with a dog she had trained to kill." Medical experts testified about the severity of Bethany's injuries from the brief contact before she reached safety. Had Miss Caldwell not managed to barricade herself and the children, the attack would likely have been fatal, Dr. Matthews stated. The dog was trained for maximum aggression. Throughout the testimony, Veronica maintained her composed facade, but small cracks began to show. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms when Marcus testified. Her jaw clenched as the security footage played. Her eyes narrowed during Bethany's medical testimony. The final blow came when the prosecution played enhanced audio from the security footage of Veronica's training sessions. Her voice, clearly captured by the outdoor microphones, revealed the premeditation. "That's right, Kaiser. When you smell her perfume, you'll know what to do. She'll pay for destroying my marriage. They'll all pay." The jury's expressions shifted from shock to disgust as the evidence mounted. Veronica's elaborate scheme, laid bare in the courtroom, showed not just premeditation, but a disturbing level of calculation. She had weaponized a family pet, traumatized her own children, and nearly killed an innocent young woman, all in service of a revenge plot against her unfaithful husband. Marcus's testimony had been the keystone that brought all the evidence together. His innocent recounting of what he had witnessed, untainted by adult understanding of the consequences, carried a weight that no other testimony could match. The truth, spoken simply through a child's eyes, revealed the full horror of Veronica's actions. As Marcus stepped down from the witness stand, he paused briefly near his mother. For a moment, the mask cracked completely, and Veronica reached toward her son. But Marcus stepped back, turning away to hurry into his aunt's protective embrace. In that moment, watching her son retreat from her touch, Veronica seemed to finally understand what she had lost. Not just her freedom. The verdict was now a foregone conclusion, but the trust and love of her own children. No amount of wealth, connections, or legal maneuvering could undo the damage her quest for revenge had wrought. The prosecution rested its case, leaving the defense with little room to maneuver. Veronica's elaborate plan to punish her husband's infidelity had been exposed in all its calculated malice, and not even the most skilled legal team could spin such overwhelming evidence into reasonable doubt. The defense attorney's closing arguments faltered as Veronica suddenly stood up, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the table until her knuckles turned white. The mask of controlled sophistication she'd maintained throughout the trial cracked like thin ice. "This is absurd!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the stunned courtroom. "You're all acting like I'm some kind of monster for protecting my family." Judge Harrison banged his gavel. "Mrs. Thornton, you will sit down immediately." But Veronica was beyond hearing. Weeks of carefully orchestrated composure shattered as she pointed an accusing finger at Richard. "He destroyed our marriage. He threw away 15 years for some young trophy, and I'm supposed to just accept that?" Her defense attorney tried to grab her arm, but she yanked it away. The elegant socialite who had entered the courtroom that morning transformed before their eyes into something raw and frightening. Her carefully styled hair fell loose around her face as she spun to face the jury. "You want to judge me? Fine. But that girl knew exactly what she was doing, looking just like his little mistress. The same build, the same hair, even wearing that disgusting jasmine perfume." Spittle flew from her lips as she ranted. "It wasn't random. I made sure she matched perfectly. I wanted him to see what his betrayal cost." Gasps echoed through the gallery. Bethany's mother wrapped a protective arm around her daughter, while Richard sank lower in his seat, shame etched across his features. "Mrs. Thornton," Judge Harrison warned, "if you do not control yourself, you will be held in contempt." "Contempt?" Veronica laughed, a high, unhinged sound. "I've been held in contempt every day since he started sleeping with that whore. I had private investigators follow them to their little love nests. I watched them together while I planned everything. Kaiser was just doing what he was trained to do, protect our family from threats." Her defense team looked horrified as she continued destroying their carefully constructed defense strategy. The lead attorney's face had gone pale as he realized his client was confessing to premeditated attempted murder in open court. "Mrs. Thornton, please," he begged quietly, but Veronica shoved him away. "You think I care about some college girl's injuries? She was nothing. A prop to teach him a lesson." Her voice rose to a shriek. "I picked her specifically because she looked like his mistress. I made sure our regular sitter had an emergency. I trained Kaiser for weeks to attack that perfume, and I would do it again." The jury members recoiled from her venom. Several looked at Bethany with obvious sympathy as the young woman sat quietly, dignity intact despite Veronica's savage attack on her character. "The only thing I regret," Veronica continued, her face contorted with rage, "is that she managed to get to that bathroom in time. Kaiser was supposed to finish the job. Then Richard would know exactly how it feels to have something precious taken away." Marcus began to cry in his aunt's arms, and the sound seemed to momentarily pierce Veronica's fury. She turned toward her son, her expression shifting to something almost pleading. "Marcus, baby, you don't understand. Mommy was protecting us. Your father betrayed us all. He deserved to suffer. That girl meant nothing. She was just a means to an end." But Marcus buried his face in his aunt's shoulder, refusing to look at his mother. The rejection seemed to push Veronica over a final edge. "Fine, take his side. You're all against me, but I'm the only one strong enough to do what needed to be done. Richard deserved to find that girl torn apart. He deserved to live with that guilt. I planned everything perfectly. The timing, the training, all of it. Kaiser was supposed to kill her." The gallery erupted in shocked murmurs. The court reporter's fingers flew across her keyboard, capturing every damning word. Veronica's defense team sat with their heads in their hands, their case lying in ruins around them. "That's enough!" Judge Harrison's voice boomed through the courtroom. "Bailiff, restrain the defendant!" As two court officers moved toward her, Veronica's composure crumbled completely. The sophisticated facade fell away entirely, revealing the raw hatred beneath. She knocked over her chair as she backed away from them. "You can't touch me! Do you know who my family is? We own half this city. That little nothing deserved what she got. She's lucky she's not dead. And Richard?" She turned to face her husband, teeth bared in a snarl. "You'll never forget what your betrayal cost. Every time you look at your precious children, you'll remember how your actions destroyed their mother." The bailiffs reached her then, taking her arms as she thrashed and screamed. Her designer suit was disheveled, her careful makeup streaked with tears of rage. The wealthy socialite had vanished, leaving only a snarling, hateful creature in her place. "Get your hands off me! I did what any woman would do. He deserved to suffer. That girl deserved to die. Kaiser was just following his training. I spent weeks getting him ready. Every detail was perfect." As they led her from the courtroom, her voice rose to a final shriek. "I'm glad I did it. I'd do it again. She deserved everything she got." The heavy doors closed behind her, but her screams could still be heard echoing down the hallway. In the stunned silence that followed, Bethany sat quietly with her parents, her composure a stark contrast to Veronica's meltdown. The young woman's dignity in the face of such vitriol seemed to affect the jury deeply. Richard Thornton had slumped in his seat, his face ashen as he confronted the full consequences of his actions. His children clung to their aunt, who glared at him with undisguised contempt. His wife's public breakdown had laid bare not just her crimes, but the rot at the core of their privileged existence. The judge cleared his throat, clearly shaken by the unprecedented display. In light of the defendant's statements, this court will recess until tomorrow morning. The jury is instructed to disregard. He paused, then sighed heavily. Well, given the nature of those confessions, I suppose that's rather moot. We'll resume for closing arguments at 9 a.m. tomorrow. As the courtroom slowly emptied, the contrast between Veronica's explosive hatred and Bethany's quiet strength lingered in the air. The young woman's recovery and dignity threw Veronica's privileged rage into sharp relief, revealing the true nature of both their characters. One had faced near death with grace and emerged stronger. The other had fallen from the heights of society, revealed as nothing more than a vengeful sociopath who felt no remorse for nearly killing an innocent teenager. The jury members filed out, their expressions making clear that Veronica's breakdown had eliminated any remaining doubt about her guilt or mental state. Her complete lack of remorse, her proud admission of premeditation, and her continued insistence that attempted murder was justified by her husband's infidelity had sealed her fate more thoroughly than any evidence could have. The judge's gavel struck with finality. Veronica Thornton, this court sentences you to 25 years in prison for attempted first-degree murder and criminal conspiracy. Judge Harrison's voice rang through the hushed courtroom. Given the premeditated nature of your actions and your complete lack of remorse, I see no reason for leniency. Veronica stood rigid in her orange jumpsuit, her perfectly maintained appearance now stripped away. Her cold eyes swept the courtroom one final time before the bailiffs led her away. The sound of her designer heels clicking on the floor echoed until the heavy doors closed behind her. Richard Thornton watched his wife's departure with a mixture of guilt and relief. His real estate empire had crumbled in the wake of the scandal, with clients and partners distancing themselves from the toxic publicity. But as he glanced at Bethany sitting with her family, he knew he'd made the right choice in testifying. Later that week, Richard announced the establishment of the Bethany Caldwell Scholarship Fund for Criminal Justice Studies. "While I cannot undo the harm my actions set in motion," he stated at the press conference, "I can help ensure other victims receive the justice they deserve." Bethany's recovery had given her a new purpose, The detectives who had meticulously uncovered Veronica's plot had inspired her to switch her major to criminal justice. "Sometimes justice needs advocates who understand what it's like to be a victim," she explained to her parents. "I want to be that advocate for others." Her connection with Marcus and Lily grew stronger in the months following the trial. She visited them regularly, helping them process their trauma through simple activities like baking cookies or playing board games. The children, initially withdrawn after their mother's imprisonment, slowly began to smile again in her presence. "You make us feel safe," Marcus confided one afternoon while they worked on his homework. "Mom always made everything scary, but you make things okay again." Richard threw himself into therapy, finally confronting the selfishness that had contributed to the family's destruction. His sessions with a family counselor helped him understand his children's needs better. "I was so focused on success, I forgot what really mattered," he admitted during a joint session with Marcus and Lily. "I'm learning to be the father you deserve." Perhaps the most surprising transformation came from Kaiser. After extensive work with professional trainers to undo Veronica's cruel conditioning, the German Shepherd's natural, gentle nature emerged. The trainers discovered his exceptional empathy made him perfect for therapy work. Now Kaiser visited hospitals and trauma centers, bringing comfort to patients recovering from their own ordeals. His story of rehabilitation inspired others, showing how even those manipulated into causing harm could find redemption through healing others. Bethany sometimes visited Kaiser at his new therapy dog training center. Watching him gently interact with patients, she marveled at how far they'd both come from that terrifying night. "We're both survivors," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "And we both found ways to turn our trauma into something positive." The transformation of relationships proved the most profound outcome of the tragedy. Richard, though still wrestling with the consequences of his actions, dedicated himself to rebuilding trust with his children. Bethany's compassion helped the Thornton children heal, while her new career path promised to help future victims find their own justice. Out of Veronica's calculated cruelty emerged unexpected bonds and personal growth, proving that even the darkest actions couldn't prevent light from eventually breaking through. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.